So the show match between the San Francisco Shock and O2 Blast happened today. And while the first two maps were more or less jokes, the final one, the 5v5 one, was actually pretty interesting and worth examining, so I figured I'd go over it. Also, thank you to everyone who came out to the stream. Sorry if it wasn't as good as you'd hoped. I was a bit nervous, but hopefully you enjoyed it, and let me know if you'd like to see that become a regular thing as we move closer to the regular season. On to my thoughts on how 5v5 looked. It was pretty interesting because we actually got a 5v5 and a 6v6 right next to each other. And I feel like for 5v5, I do enjoy it more. It really felt like more things were happening at all times. There's always a fight, always something to watch. Rather than Overwatch 1, where oftentimes there's a lot of downtime and just shooting at and just poking at shields. Now, for the meta for 5v5, many metas were played, but the prevailing one on the side of the Shock, which has apparently been very strong in internal scrims across several teams, was Zarya, Tracer, Reaper, Ana, and Brig, where O2 ran more or less the same comp with Hitscan and D.Va and for their counterparts, though they did end up switching to the other comp halfway through the match. I feel like this comp works because Zarya could be a new Reinhardt, pretty much. Her high damage output and useful bubbles are very good for enabling the Reaper and the Tracer to get dives in, while the Zarya is able to stay back with the supports and deal damage to any flankers. I don't think it's necessarily indicative of the Overwatch 2 meta, because the Warcraft obviously isn't entirely accurate. But it's interesting how a lot of people wrote Zarya off as being useless, but her high damage potential and her useful bubbles are dominant at the moment. It was very fluid though. The only two characters that were in 100% of the time was Tracer, and Ana was played almost the entire time as well. Her Bionic Grenade especially is able to get a ton of value now due to the lack of a tank to stop it. And it's also more difficult for her to be dived, just due to the fact that there's a lot of fighting happening, though proper anti-sync did give Finn and Ho1 a lot of work. Let's get into the gameplay. I'll be focusing on the Shock for this video. Now, the man of the hour, the solo tank Super, there's quite a bit to talk about. He really impressed me here. He played the Zarya, Rein, Hog, and looked good at them all. He was able to get a lot of value from Zarya. He got a lot of kills, he built his ult fast, and overall was very brawly. He played her pretty much like a Reinhardt, which I think is really good for Overwatch 2. However, he did have a few questionable bubbles, I would say. He ran out of them frequently and would end up defenseless as dying. And I remember this one clip where Kilo was like 40 HP and Super bubbled himself instead of Kilo despite being full health. I don't know if he could prevent that, but still, it seems like at that times he used bubbles for ult charge rather than actual utility, and was punished when he was left defenseless without them. His Rein and Hog were still great. He was really aggressive, got a ton of kills, and made a ton of space. Kilo especially was able to capitalize on that. He wouldn't be able to be as aggressive without the help of his trusty supports, Finn and Violet. Finn really impressed me personally. He had a few big bionades, but the way he enabled Super to play so aggressive was astounding. He gave him consistent heals from the sidelines, and they were so synced up. He seems to have a lot of communication with Super already, with a lot of nano boosts and great heals coming in. And Super would not have been able to play nearly as well without his consistent healing. He did die a bit more than I'd like to see, but it is pretty difficult for him to get the healing necessary, especially with a top-tier Tracer like he's saying, breathing down his back. And Super was generally more aggressive than passive and protection. It worked out though. He did get worked a bit. Violet was stuck on Brig duty again, which I kind of predicted. He was able to get onto the Zen for a round, and he got a few nice shots in and built ult pretty quickly, but it was mainly Brig. For what it's worth, he got a few good whip shots in and did a good job helping his team. He did have a weird Aspire or two though. Overall, he was really solid, about as much as I expected, and consistent with his performance from last season, and he's definitely a starter tier. But I do hope they sign a real main support. I really miss Violet maining the flex support. Now for the Shock TPS, boy did Proper have a field day. Kilo is a bit more interesting to talk about, but Proper was absurd. I don't think he lost a single duel to Heesang other than that one pulse bomb. And Heesang is a really strong Tracer. And Proper was putting constant pressure on the back line as well. He nearly killed the tanks by catching them out several times, which is especially impressive considering the extra 100 HP they all have. But we already know he's nuts, so let's talk about Kilo. I think Kilo had a really strong showing as well, but he did have a few drawbacks. Mechanically, he was absolutely nuts. He output very consistent damage, and I would say he was the primary damage dealer for the team. He had a bunch of really good kills on the Reaper. He worked very well with Super, and was very aggressive like him. His Widow was very strong. He got a ton of great shots, and capitalized on Super's aggression very well, and shut down Probe for the most part. And even in the brief time he played Hanzo, he also got a lot of kills, landing an absurd shot into Aiden to shut down the dreams of O2 Blast before they even started. However, his positioning was a bit rough. He overextended a lot on Reaper, and he was killed early by being caught out by Ho1. I don't really know if he was expecting a bubble from Super a lot of times, and there was just some miscommunication, or if he just went off the deep end, but there was a lot of really stupid positioning. At one point, he even teleported right into the back line. Even on Widow, he overextended onto the payload for no reason, and was simply slept and killed, and the Shock had to back off. I know it was just a show match, but it really was an issue. I hope he can iron it out before the season starts, as he really showed that mechanically he's cracked and one of the better ones in the game currently. Overall, I'm pretty happy with what the Shock showed, though. I wouldn't say take the show match all that seriously, but Super showed he has the flexibility needed to be a solo tank, despite a little bit of weirdness at the Zarya. Finn and Violet enabled their DPS and tanks very well on a variety of heroes and compositions, and Proper and Kilo absolutely pounded, though Kilo did get caught out of position a lot. Shock fans definitely have a lot to be excited for next year. Thanks for watching, and remember to hit like and subscribe for more. I upload nearly daily Overwatch League content, and I'm trying to hit 1,000 subs by the end of Season 5, so any subscription helps greatly. Thanks.